I would say it's a pleasure to be with you, but it's no pleasure at all. Not anything against you, but what brings us together isn't pleasurable. I mention that because usually I start a talk by saying shalom, which is the Hebrew word to say hello. It also means peace. But the reason why Pastor Seif asked me to come and speak is because there is no peace. Yeah. Typically, I'll follow with saying it's really such a pleasure to be with you all. But it's not a pleasure. You're a pleasure. The object of our attention this evening will be to take a look at the situation in Gaza. My wife, Barry, is with us. She was supposed to be on an airplane tonight going to Israel. Barry is in and out of Israel. She's a minister, as am I, with Grace International. It's where we hold our ministerial credentials, and she superintends a nonprofit in Israel. And a number here have gone with her and us. All that's shuttered now because the planes are closed. As you know, the dogs of war have been unleashed in the Middle East. And it's arguably going to get worse before it gets better. And it's hard to get much worse than what it's been. The extent to which you keep your eye on the news, I know not. But of German Jewish extract myself, my mother was smuggled out of Nazi Germany by nuns. Barry's family too. We both are born and raised in the Jewish tradition through both parents. And I'm familiar with atrocity because my parents came from it. I've been in and out of Israel over 50 times. Have some sense of the way people think. And it's just a tough season for all of us, and I know that's sweeping up on your shores. This evening, I want to make Gaza the object. Well, Steve wanted me to make Gaza the object of our attention. Actually, it's going to be the first of a three-part treatment of events in the Middle East. I'm interested in looking at Gaza, but I'm interested in the story of Israel and the Crosshairs. As you know, the dogs of war have been unleashed. And I would say the dogs of war are savage, are animals. Someone said to me, they're animals. When you think of individuals that have gone in there and they found over 40 babies with their heads decapitated. I mean, never mind, there was a concert, kids were out there for a festival, 250 were slaughtered. To say these are animals that did this does an insult to animals.
That's right.
You know, animals. I mean, if animals could speak, they'd say, wait a minute, don't drag us into this.
Yeah.
You know, granted, when the animal kingdom, it can get rather savage. I suppose if I'm a gazelle and a lion's behind me about to jump, I'm not a happy camper. But that's for food and survival. This is for something different. This is driven by some other kind of urge. And what I'd like to do is explore it with you this evening. But having said that, I mean, if you're like me, I've just never seen anything like it. And I've seen a lot. What wasn't mentioned in there, I'm a retired police officer. I've seen a lot on the streets. You know, I've seen what people can do. You know, but this is just in a class by itself. Now, what I want you to do is take a look at the region here. You're seeing the Mediterranean Sea, and it's kind of it's like a fisheye view. You can see what's called Palestine, which is misnamed, by the way. It's Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan, the land of Judea. The land itself was called Palestine. The Romans named it that, Aelia Capitolonia. Petalonia, Palestinia derives from that. The Romans named it that when they conquered Judea, some 2,000 years ago. But what's referred to as the land of Palestine, you can see that, its center. You'll see the Arabian Peninsula. The word Arabah in Hebrew harks to the dry lands. You'll see what's referred to as the Sinai Peninsula, and then you'll see a green belt in Egypt there. It's very, very green because it's watered by the Nile. Now, if you can it's a small sliver. There's kind of an arrow pointed to what's referred to as the West Bank, and underneath that there's the Gaza Strip. the problems that you're hearing about come from this stretch of land that'll be the object of our attention this evening, called the Gaza Strip. We'll look at the demographics of it some. It's not big. If you look at the density of the population, it's under 2 million people, 1.5. If you're looking at land mass, we're looking at under 150 square miles. It's not enormous, but the kind of energies that are unleashed from it be the object of our attention. And one of the things that I want to consider with you is, what do we know about Gaza in and from biblical literature? To the extent to which you would find value in that, I'll leave that up to you, but I don't want to just give a history report or a journalist speaking to the modern moment, which I can, but as a biblical student, Gaza, by the way, is one of the oldest cities in the world. And it's been important to many for a variety of reasons, one of which, if you just look at where it is, if you can see where it says Gaza Strip, that little parcel, what you're looking at, if you look at the Gaza, you're looking at the southeastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea. What I just want you to understand with me is you're looking at the only land bridge that's connecting Asia, Europa to the north, and then North Africa. You see the Sinai Peninsula and then Egypt, you're in North Africa. Now, if you look at the terrain, and this is something of a topographical map, which gives you a picture, which is why Egypt, because of the Nile, it's watered, it's verdant, it's lush. By way of contradistinction, you look at the Sinai Peninsula, in Hebrew, it's midbar, it's wilderness. And then you look at the Arabian desert. You're looking at barren, inhospitable lands. The reason why I mention that is individuals that went overland as people migrated, as armies moved from Africa over into the ancient Near East and Asia, and then up into Europe. All land forces, they moved, they marched through that region. They're hugging the Mediterranean Sea. And Gaza Strip is an area there that was a way station. It's been fortified for millennia because the ancients understood it to be extremely strategic. And so when you look at biblical literature, you're looking at an area called Gaza, which hugs up right against Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan. And it's the only natural way station as individuals are making their crossing from one continent to the next. It's well fortified. It was understood to be a strategic place. And indeed it was. So it's caught the attention of Bible readers for a variety of reasons. Now, Gaza, as I mentioned here, just to go through, is one of the oldest cities owing to its strategic location. It's a strategic land bridge connecting Europe, Asia, and Africa. In the 12th century, now I'll go back here just because I want you to see this, that if you look at the Gaza Strip area, in the 12th century BC, there was an invasion from the Ionian Islands. I mentioned this, Ramses the Great in Egypt. You see the Nile Delta there. In hieroglyphs from his era tell the story of his great battle with the Sea Peoples, these invaders from the sea. Ramses was successful at repelling them, but these invaders secured a toehold on the southeastern part of the Mediterranean in what would be referred to today as the Gaza Strip. And these sea peoples were known as the Philistines, from Philistine, sea peoples. They were Ionian Greeks, individuals in Israel today who refer to themselves as Palestinians and the land of Palestine. Want to lay seeds to the claim of some ancient tradition in the land by hijacking a name. The Islamic or Arabic incursion into Israel doesn't come for many, 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 many centuries later. Muhammad is born in 570 AD. He starts to have visions in 610 AD. Some years after his death in the 7th century, you have the beginnings of the Islamic invasions that extend into the land of Judea and sweep over North Africa and then go eastward toward what we refer to as Iran today. I'll talk a little more about Iran on another day. This is going to be, in effect, the first of a 3-part series. But if you look at the Islamic invasion of the real estate, we're looking at 2,000 years after the Philistines actually invaded, who were Greeks. In any case, we know about these Philistines in biblical literature. Again, I note here in the 12th century, Philistines made the city of Gaza one of the 5 cities in their pentapolis. 5 cities. And some of these cities you might be aware of if you're familiar with Goliath. Goliath in Hebrew. Goliath of Gath. Gath was a Philistine city. There's a story in Judges there about someone named Samson who goes and removes the gates from Gaza, if you're familiar with that. And you might recall he eventually is going to die. They have him tethered to pillars, and his strength comes back, and he pushes them, and the house collapses. That's Gaza. And it says in the biblical text that the elites, the Philistine elites, died, and it says as a warrior he accomplished more in his death than he did in his life. So we run upon the story of Gaza in biblical literature and certain tensions with the Hebrew peoples. It was eventually conquered by Joshua. In the Jewish world, there's Moshe Rabbeinu, there's Moses who leads them to the land. Joshua leads them into it and records his conquest of the city. There is a brief resurgence, however, where in Gaza they claim their own dominance, and those ruling elites in Gaza were eventually toppled by Samson, as I'd mentioned. There's notice of Gazan intrigue in biblical literature, and in fact, it's just one of these verses that I want to turn your attention to, if you will, please, in Amos. You might not get many messages from Amos. I won't do all of it, but I just want to look and see where you're hearing Gaza mentioned as a source of prophetic denunciation. Now, in drawing your attention to this, I'm not laying any siege to the claim that what you're looking at here in the biblical text is some prophecy about what we're seeing here in 2023. The prophets go on and on. There are a variety of texts that are condemnatory in nature because of political intrigue. But here, just to give an example, in chapter 1, verse 6 in Amos, thus says Adonai, thus says the Lord, for 3 crimes of Gaza, even for 4, I will not relent. 1, 2, 3, these people are storing it up, and God says, I'm not a happy camper. For they exiled an entire population, giving them over to Eden. So I will send fire on the wall of Gaza. It will devour its citadels. So you have a prophetic denunciation here. These people did bad. What they did is they conquered Jews, and they deported them outright, whatever they didn't kill. And so it was the savagery associated with that skirmish and the aftermath of it that here in the biblical text invokes God's ire. If you want to get a window into the moment, where you see another biblical text that speaks to the moment in Yoel and Joel, in chapter 4, verse 4, moreover, what are you to me, Tyre and Sidon? Now, Tyre and Sidon, you're looking at Phoenicia. We're looking at Lebanon. What are you, Lebanon, and all the regions of Philistia? Now, remember, Philistia, it's the Gaza area. It's the toehold where the Philistine secured. He says, what are you to me? He says in verse 6, the children of Judah and of Jerusalem you sold to the Greeks in order to remove them far from their own territory. You can pick up the tensions here. But it's not just tensions in general. I mean, here we're alighting upon a situation where, according to the author, those in Gath got the upper hand in it. But you'll notice here, it's explicit, it's not tacit. He said, you removed those people from their own territory. That is to say, that land belongs to the Hebrew people. And what you did is you beat them and you deported them all. People would do that in antiquity. In fact, in the annals of Roman historiography, in the early 2nd century AD, the Romans gathered up 70,000 Hebrews from North Africa and deported them to the Iberian Peninsula, to Spain. There was a very robust Jewish population in Spain. Through time and circumstance, when Isabella and Ferdinand, when you have the reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula, when there's this Christian resurgence that drives out the Islamic presence that had been there for quite some time, all the Jews are driven out or driven underground. Benjamin Netanyahu, the current prime minister in Israel, his father took a PhD in Hispanic studies and was expert on the Iberian Peninsula, and he argued if Hispanic people in the southern part of the United States and Central America and South America took a DNA test, they'd find 30 million of them are of Jewish extract. They're part of what in Hebrew is referred to as Zerah Yisrael, the seed of Israel, even though they weren't acquainted with the religion of Israel because they were upended with the Inquisition and Catholicism and what have you. In any case, that's tangential. You have people deported here in the Yoel text. In Joel, he says, listen, what did you do? You deported these people from their land. You removed them from their own territory. It's an explicit reference. The Hebrew people belong in the Hebrew land. You get that in Bereshit, in Genesis. God tells Abraham, he says, I will take you to the land that I will show you and give you, and I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. It's explicit in biblical literature that God gave a people a piece of real estate. Granted, it's not much bigger than the state of New Jersey. But you have real estate that was commended to a people. And, people... The Jewish story in Israel and the tensions associated with it are noted in the Bible from Genesis to maps. From one end to the other. Now, people tell me, it's really amazing, isn't it tragic? Jewish people read the Bible and they can't see Jesus. Well, I understand that, but the truth of the matter is you can read the Old Testament and it's not abundantly clear. You need someone to show you. Now, it doesn't surprise me that Jewish people read the Old Testament and don't see Jesus. What surprises me is that Christian people read the Bible and don't see Jews. Quite frankly. Someone wants to talk about spiritual blindness. Well, explain that one to me. This people and this land. Well, you theologians do all this fancy rigging and dancing and manufacturing things. Well, look, I only work here. To me, it seems rather clear. In any case, my point here isn't as much to argue the case for Hebrew people and Hebrew real estate, as much as it is to note with you here, in terms of tensions from the region, I just want you to understand they're ubiquitous. Israel captured Gaza in 1967. There have been a few wars. And I could and will at another point in time spend a little more time looking at just the history of modern Israel. And it's miraculous, by the way, at so many levels. Just miraculous. Israel captured the area called Gaza in 1967. And then in a hoped-for land for peace swap, Israel handed Gaza over to Palestinian authorities in 2005. Ariel Sharon, the old make love, not war, let's try. And Gaza had been very well developed. It was a modern area, many Jewish communities there, malls, shopping center, 20th century stuff. And Ariel Sharon said, look, They're saying that we're taking over. Let's just try. The whole of the Sinai Peninsula was given to Egypt when Egypt signed a treaty. And by the way, I should say parenthetically, don't cop an anti-Muslim attitude amidst the turbulence of these trying times. It's not universal. Israel has developed amicable relationships with Egypt, with Jordan, with Saudi Arabia. It's not like all the Islamic peoples are up in air. And what happens here is Israel says, okay, let's try this, because Israel had been giving up. Well, here, take this and take that. Well, there have been a variety of flare-ups since giving back the land in 2006, 2008, 2012, 14, 21, and now in 2023. Just thousands and thousands of rockets. What had happened is when Israel gave the Gaza to the Palestinian Authority, they gave it to Yasser Arafat's group, Fatah. What happened is there was another political group in Gaza that decided that Arafat's group was way too moderate, and it was Hamas. And they wanted more vitriol and more rigor. They won an election and then never had another one since. And you're looking at a part of the world. It's not even representative of the entire Muslim world. In fact, it's a different breed of Muslim. And many people aren't familiar. Someone thinks a Muslim's a Muslim, like someone thinks a Jew's a Jew. There's different kinds of Jews. There's Orthodox Jews, conservative Jews, Reform Jews. But people are Jews are Jew. They don't know all the difference with the different philosophical camps. In Islam, there's Sunni Islam and there's Shia Islam. I mention this because most of the people in the region are Sunnis, but Hamas is funded by Shia out of Iran, which is another story. And I'll certainly develop some more time with that, but I'm halfway done with this. Gaza itself is not noted as a major problem. Its association with Iran, however, is another story and may indeed have prophetic implications. I mention this because people that aren't even religious are familiar with the text in Revelation, of the Battle of Armageddon. People that aren't familiar with the Bible, the word Armageddon harks to this cataclysmic war at the ragged edge of human history. If you look at the way the author in Revelation sets up Armageddon, he says, and it's explicit, it's not tacit, I'm not inferring, it's just there. He says that there are these hordes that are amassed on the east side of the Euphrates. And then they cross the Euphrates into the region, says they're driven by spirits and demons, and these forces are driven to the battle of the great God Almighty, the Battle of Armageddon. The reason why I mention that, if you look at biblical literature 2,000 years ago in Revelation, it alights upon this situation on the other side of the Euphrates that sweeps into the region and facilitates this cataclysmic war. And I mention that because if you look at the map and you ask yourself the question, what's on the other side of the Euphrates? It's Iran. And by the way, even the name Iran, and I'm not looking to be disparaging, look it up. When in doubt, Google. Google. If you want to ask the question, where did the name Iran come from? When did it come? Iran named itself Iran when Hitler was in power to identify with Aryan. It's cut from the same cloth. It's rather interesting. I remember telling someone that, and they got really mad at me, but don't shoot the messenger. When in doubt, Google. And then shoot Google. It'll come up there and then just take your gun, shoot it then. I only work here. Now, the Gaza Strip today, for 20 more minutes, I want to explore some of that. Ariel Sharon, as I'd mentioned, who had been a celebrated general, figured he made his name for himself making war. Now as a politician, let me make a name making peace. And he was the architect of this land swap. Let's give them Gaza. Israel disengaged from Gaza in 2005, at which time it gave the land mass to the Palestinian Authority. In 2007, Hamas wrested control from the PLO and has been terrorizing southern Israel ever since. You know, among other things, I worked in television over a decade, 12 years ago or so. I remember filming a program at Sderot. And, you know, I'm old police, so I go to the police station there, and, you know, one cop to another, and the chief takes me out back. They have pallets of these, you know, rockets that had been launched to Sderot. That blew, and you can see kind of the remnant of, and you can see there's little signs in Arabic to Jerusalem with love. You know, I mean, but there's hundreds and thousands, unprovoked, shooting. It's happened ever since. The land for peace didn't produce any peace. It's like the guy that tells his wife, listen, if you only lose weight, I'd love you. And she neurotically loses weight. You know, I really like brown hair, but you have red hair. If you only dye her hair, she dyes her. Eventually they realize nothing works. She's neurotic trying to please him. But then you get to a point you realize the problem isn't me. The problem is this guy in this head that well, you got to do this, you got to, I mean, it's something else. That you can you know, well, I'll try this and please this and do that. But you see Ariel Sharon, well, let's try this. Doesn't seem like it worked, does it? Now here you're looking at Israel again. You can see the Sinai Peninsula, and you can see that strip of land. Now, if you're looking at Israel, it's no bigger than the state of New Jersey. Its widest point is 50 miles east to west. So if you look at that strip of land there, it's just not much at the end of the day. But there are problems coming from there. Now, it's not just there. Gaza itself has become a staging area for Hamas, an Iranian proxy, and the problems really coming from there. I should say that I don't know where you are politically, that you know, I tend to be more on the Republican side of the equation. When I saw our president make a speech in support of Israel, I was pleased by that, standing squarely in support of Israel. But, you know, maybe if he hadn't given them $6 billion a few weeks ago. But Iran says, oh, but they promised that they weren't going to use any of that. Okay, so maybe if they're putting $6 billion in the hospital, so then there's money in their budgets that were earmarked for the hospitals. Now we can vacate that and use it for more war. In any case, when you look at the Gaza Strip, you're looking at a population in 21 just shy of 2 million. In terms of on the religious side, you're looking 98 to 99% Muslim, predominantly Sunni, which is interesting. Because I'd mentioned that if you look at Hamas, it's funded by Shia monies out of Iran. I know our president thinks the greatest existential threat is global warming. In Israel, they think the greatest existential threat is Iran. And I remember years ago doing a television program, and we interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu then. Listen, Iran, you go to Israel, Iran. Not just because of the news today. It's the classic story. It's the major problem. In Iran, if they had a nuclear weapon, you can do in 6 minutes what took Hitler 6 years to do. Kill 6 million Jews. They'd love to do it. It's part of the charter. You look at the Hamas charter. How can you, well, if Israel can only negotiate with Hamas, yes, but it's hard to negotiate with people when they say their purpose in life is to destroy you. Well, Jeffrey, you're exaggerating. No, just read the Palestinian charter. Read what Hamas has to say. Don't take my word for it. You know, maybe I'm lying. I'm a Jew. You know, I'm a little biased here. Look it up. But in any case, if you're looking at a population, we're looking at shy of 2 million people. Religiously, we're looking at 98% that are Muslim, and they're Sunni Muslims. Now, the Sunni Muslims and the Shia, I mean, the tensions are ubiquitous. They've been killing each other for centuries, but now we found something we can get along with. We differ with this, we fight about that, we fight about that, we differ with this, but now we have one thing in common. We both hate Jews. Let's be friends. Let's unite in common purpose. Now, the story of anti-Semitism, I could talk about, I won't do it here. But again, you're looking at a landmass, as I mentioned, of 140 square miles. It's not that big. Now, here's the neighborhood. And I'm going to be exploring this a little more. You see in the yellow in the middle, there's this strip called Israel. It's so thin at one point, it's only about 10 miles wide. Now, I don't know about you. I'll jog 10 miles. You know, I'm 68 years old, but you don't get to be this good looking by accident. I run. Okay, now, I'll get out and I'll jog, here to there. I mean, that's the country east to west. These Jews are taking over the world, taking over all the territory. Well, there you're just looking at the proximate. That doesn't tell the whole story. You're looking at a country at its narrowest is 10 miles wide, at its widest is 50 miles wide. The Jews are taking over the world. The last I checked, the world was like 24,000 miles around. That's the belt. And from 10 miles to 50 miles is just too much for Jews. In any case, the neighborhood is rather interesting, and it's not Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. I'll be talking about that a little more. But you'll see that Israel is surrounded by these various countries. And there have been tensions. And it's a miracle that Israel exists. It's a miracle. You wouldn't have bet on it. It seemed impossible. And that's especially true if you look at Jews coming out of World War II. 1 out of every 3 Jews on planet Earth were slaughtered for the crime of being Jewish. Civilians, non-combatants. It's not like they're in another war and then you die, one soldier against another, may the best shot win. That's not even what it was. It was just rounding up civilians. And that's what you have here. It's not even classical warfare. I get it. As a cop, I'd put on a uniform, a gun, and I go out there and you got to take care of business. You got cops, you got robbers, and sometimes a man's got to do what he's got to do. The robber wants to do something, the cop has to do it. May the best man win. I signed up for it. The robber signed up to be a robber. I signed up to be a cop. Let's go at it. He's got a gun, I got a gun. Let's see who wins. Okay, I get it. I respect it. Rounding up women, children, decapitating babies, slaughtering the innocents. That's something else. In any case, there's little Israel in the middle of all that. Currently, currently, like now, the region is extremely volatile. It's extremely volatile. Within the whole Jewish believing in Jesus world, there's a denomination, probably one of the major players in it. It's called the Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations. And I serve as the executive director of that. And, we're raising money, and what we're doing is, because we have friends, less with me at my age. I'm old. As this war broke out, I contacted Israel, my friends. Anybody need a gun? I'm happy to come and help. But what do they want with a 68-year-old? What do you want? But I'll jump into the fray. Well, hey, aren't you a minister? Yeah, don't mess with Texas, baby. Don't do that. Yeah. I hear glass break in the middle of the night. I got my woman in the bed next to me. Someone's breaking glass to get in. I got news for you. When I wake up, they're not going to run into a theologian. I don't run a theologian. No. I mean, no theologian there. Well, St. Jeffrey, don't you want to lead them to Jesus? Yeah, I surely will. I got a gun in my dresser, a flash of light. They'll see him in a second. Yeah, go see Jesus. Do not pass go. Collect $200. See Jesus, I'll lead them to Jesus right away. Come on. Right away. Well, Jeffrey, don't you feel guilty? You're supposed to be a man in the cloth. Hey, man's got to do what a man's got to do. Ain't no sin to protect your woman. Don't mess with Texas. There it is. Don't mess. Well, so every day I'm getting word now about people that I know in Israel. Of course, they're kids. All the kids, 18 to 21, they go into the army. And, I learn about oh, this guy, his son just got killed, the daughter just got killed. We send checks, a few $1,000s to each family. There's ministries over there, Messianic Jewish ministries. We're just handing out, raising money and handing it out like candy. But more important than all that, praying. It really is a dark season. This is war. It's not a skirmish. I've been to Israel before. Well, there's an intifada, there's an outbreak. There's a little flare up over here. Oh, and someone threw a rock over there and a bus and a problem, and there's a little something over here, a little something over there. This is different when someone, you're poking someone in the eye when you go and kill 1,000 of their children. That's going to unleash something. Now, proportionally, by the way, and it's unfair to compare, you can say, but proportionally, well, this is not only Israel's 9/11. This is not only Israel's September 11th, but if you'll permit, at the risk of sounding like I'm overstating it, statistically, it's worse than 9/11 in the sense that if you look at the population of America and you look at, 4,000 killed, and if you look at the population of Israel, 6 million Jews, and you're looking at 1,000 killed. Proportionally, it's a much larger percentage of the population. Not that you necessarily want to quantify pain statistically, but just for purposes of making the point. And it's particularly true when you're dealing with a population that is acutely aware of the Holocaust. In a previous generation, and a population that's very much aware of its own precarious existence at the moment. It's a kind of poke in the eye that is just not going to go unanswered. So currently, the region is extremely volatile. I have someone there with a match in a terrorist outfit. So while gazing at Gaza, we want to remember to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And I don't mean that in some kind of trite sense. I honestly believe that there's heaven's help for life's nasty stuff. And, in terms of the world being a rather interesting place, you haven't read 5 minutes into the Bible. You look in the Bible, the Lord makes Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, puts them in paradise. It's a Latin word meaning enclosed garden, Eden, Gan Eden. I mean, you haven't read 5 minutes into the Bible where God's made this, he kind of set it up pretty good, but then, oh my goodness, there's trouble in River City. I mean, you haven't read 5 minutes into the Bible till you realize something's gone horribly wrong. Adam and Chava get kicked out of Eden. In the 3rd chapter, in the 4th chapter, you have one brother killing another brother, Cain and Abel. In the 5th chapter, you have a man who boasts to his wives, plural. He says, some man pushed me and I killed him. He's boasting to his wives. Now, in biblical literature, it says a man leaves his father and his mother and is joined to his wife, not wives, plural. But we're already doubling up with and tripling up with these sexual appetites. Never mind that. Talk about the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. Remember, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Things are so screwed up today, you get in trouble for saying that. But I only work here. Look in the Bible, it says Adam and Eve. It doesn't say Adam and Steve. Last I checked, this is an exit, not an entrance. But I'm not a medical doctor, okay? There you go. You say, Jeffrey, you could have done without that. Okay, I admit, I'm a guest speaker. Don't worry, Steve will be back in a couple of weeks and back to normal. Guest speaker can get away with anything. But it's true. I mean, someone hasn't read 5 minutes into the Bible, something's gone horribly wrong. Now, in terms of something going horribly wrong, that doesn't catch God doesn't catch him off guard. It doesn't catch him by surprise. There's a reason why the Lord, how should we pray? How about this? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. What we want is God's kingdom to come to our world. Not just the geopolitical world we find ourselves in, but in the world that we find ourselves in. Now listen, we're going to Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. We are going to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, among other things. And this was a teaching talk here to gaze at Gaza briefly and just kind of reconstruct the story of Israel in the crosshairs in the modern moment. Next week, bring a friend. It's going to be uglier than this one. I want to look at anti-Semitism in history and prophecy, because this Jew hatred is driven by something other than just politics. I mean, there's a spirit there, and it really is from the pit of hell. You know, and we're going to look at it. It's going to be a tough talk, but you know how to pray. So, in any case, what I'm looking at here is a quick turnaround on a 3-point talk as initiating prayer points. Here, I wanted to gaze at Gaza in brief, you know, and send up some prayers because, you know, Israel's marshaling and an invasion is imminent. And Benjamin Netanyahu said there's going to be something that's going to be remembered from generations to come. You know, and it just is what it is. No one glories in war, but I wanted to look at Gaza. So we had Gaza as the object of our attention. The word object comes from the Latin word meaning to throw at. So we made Gaza and the current malaise the object of attention this evening, to then go on from there and focus prayer. Next week, I want to look at anti-Semitism in history and prophecy. Because what will happen is the Jews are going to go in there and clean house, and then people are going to complain, there's those Jews. You know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And then what I want to do on the third week is look at history's end game in biblical literature. And, you know, Jesus beckoned his disciples to pray, thy kingdom come. What's the end game? Just in a broad sense, you know, what's the culmination of human history when we look at the pages, the testimony of the ages in biblical pages? I mean, what's the description? What's the vision? And by the way, I should say parenthetically, I believe in the eventual triumph of God in human history. And by the way, the reason why I looked up what I'm going to do next 3 weeks is I forgot. I didn't even, this PowerPoint, it's not like, okay, he wants me to come and talk. Okay, Jeffrey Seif, here, Gaza, just go to your PowerPoints. I put this together on the fly. You say, Jeff, I didn't like it. Okay, what can I do in an hour? You know, you throw it together. You know, I'm on the move. I don't know if you're prepared to hear this story this evening, but I can promise you I wasn't prepared to tell it. But here we are. All of a sudden, we find ourselves in a world where we wake up to the fact that it is what it is. It is what it is. And what I want to do is remind you in biblical literature, in Hebrew, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim, in the book of Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, which is a way of saying, you know, pray for the peace of the area. That presupposes if you want to pray for rest in an area, there's forces of unrest round about. And we're beckoned to turn our focus there. Now, I know, by the way, that you and I and we, as all of us make our journey from the womb to the tomb, we have our own turbulent moments. And a lot of times, understandably, our prayers are turned toward our own situation, the things that are less than desirable in our own webs of relationships and circumstances. I get that. But given the nature of where we are, as Christian people, we want to stand in solidarity with our Jewish friends. And we see a world in trouble. So if you will, bow your head with me, and I'll say a prayer, and we'll begin our prayer meeting. Avinu Shabbat Shemayim, our Father in heaven, we bless your name, Lord, and we do bless your name, and we're glad to enter into your presence because there's peace in the shelter of your wings. But when we open our eyes and open our news feeds and watch the news, Lord, the kind of rest we seek with our eyes closed, we don't see with our eyes open. Lord, we pray, Father, that your kingdom will come and that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And Lord, use us to be your agents to bring your peace to a restless land. Father, there's areas in our own lives that are less than ideal, but no one's walked into our house and killed our babies. No one's taken our daughters off and raped them and taken them off as hostages to be used as human shields. We don't deal with that kind of precariousness. And inasmuch as you, Lord, say, as you do it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you do it to me. And you say, I was sick. Did you visit me? I was hungry. Did you feed me? I was in prison. Did you come? I was in need. Were you there? And you said, as you did it to them, you did it to me. Lord, we want to sit with those, but for a moment in prayer, who are suffering right now. As the devil unleashes his fury, Father, we pray that your kingdom come in this world. As in heaven, may it be in earth. We ask in your name, Jesus. And all God's people said, amen.